Most of the journalists are right there immediately after the finish, and that's one thing that's very difficult in pro racing, is when you're exhausted and you get done with the 200-mile race, is to deal with the press. They're always shoving mics in front of you, taking photos, asking you questions. Half the time you just feel like going back to your room and lying down on your bed and dying.
Well, we're back to the climbing again. Now we're at stage 20.
This is Morzine, Crans, Montana. This really featured basically flat stage prior to this climb. That's why before this you saw two riders that were in a breakaway. It was Pascal Jules and Hank Luberding. These two riders are very good riders, but they're not really climbers. What they had done, they had broken away on the flatter section, taken about a 2 or 3 minute lead, and they almost held it to the finish, but Fignon had attacked during the climb to chase back Arroyo, who had attacked at the base of the climb, and he rode the whole group in and ended up sprinting away at the finish.
This is also a shorter race at 104 kilometers. Is that a benefit, or does it just make the people go harder for the shorter distance?
Well, that's what I think my fault this climb. I really wanted to make up time on Hino, but because it was such a short event, I didn't have the snap or the juice to really, make the difference. And I tended to make up most of my time after 3 or 4 climbs. When everybody else was dying, I kept improving. And on a climb like this, the explosiveness and the speed that you climb was just a little bit too fast for me.
Again, these are difficult premier category climbs here?
This is a first category climb, yes. This climbs, I think, about 15 kilometers, which is about 10 miles. It's a 10-mile climb, and the grade isn't so steep on this as the others. It's about 7%, but the pace that they race at on this climb is really what makes the race.
What happens to burnout? We know by this stage in the race, many of the riders have actually dropped out of this event. How big is the bulk of riders still in contention here?
I think there's I'd say 1/4 of the riders have probably stopped. Those are the riders who really have no chance of finishing high overall. A lot of teams, the general classification is really set. There's not much teamwork for the other team riders to do, and a lot of them get depressed and just say they can't, suffer through this. Although the Tour de France is an exceptional race, because I think most of the people do want to finish because of the prestige of finishing the Tour. That's why you'll find that in the Tour de France there are a lot less people who drop out than, say, a normal race of this severity.
How do you decide whether you want to go for an individual stage win, which certainly wins a lot of recognition, versus your placing in the overall Tour?
Well, different riders, that's one thing that's deceiving about the Tour de France. Although Fignon won quite a few stages, I never won a stage, Hino never won a stage. The main thing is to be consistent. The most important thing of the Tour de France is to place in the top 5. To win a stage is the next most important thing. Although to win a stage, I'd say about 75% of the victories that people win stages by are people who are really not in contention for the general classification. Meaning that if you're 30 minutes behind, a lot of times we'll let that rider who's 30 minutes behind get a 5-minute lead, knowing that he's no real danger to us. And half the time, those people end up staying away to the finish.
So perhaps the key is to simply have good, consistent top 10 finishes.
Oh, that's the way I did it. I just tried to be as consistent as possible.
Fignon looks extremely strong here.
Yeah, right now this is where you can see attacks. This is typical racing on a climb, especially if the finish is about 4 or 5 kilometers away. This guy, I think it's Delgado, or Grosby, just got dropped. This is Pascal Jules. He was the one that was in the breakaway that had 2 or 3 minutes before the bottom of the climb. He ended up placing quite well for his type of riding.
And we have 2 teammates there in Fignon and Jules.
Right, but on a mountain, it doesn't really play an important role because of unless the teammate is strong enough to start leading the pace. Right now you can see that's Arroyo leading the group, Fignon behind him, and Krikilian just on Arroyo's wheel. Fignon just made an attack. I think he tried getting away several times from Arroyo, although it wasn't as severe, great as he had hoped, and I think that Arroyo kept coming back.
The racing is certainly close here. We saw some of the spectators pouring water on the riders. Does that help a rider up a climb like this?
Well, one thing a general rule is if it's a mountain finish, I'll try to put water on my neck or my head. It's really important not to pour too much on you, especially if you soak your jersey, because you're adding another pound or two to your weight, which can be vital. I mean, a pound or two on a 15-kilometer climb is a lot of energy to push that weight up. Also, if it's a climb with a very long descent, if you've got a jersey that's soaked, you risk catching a cold on the downhill descent.
Fignon con vedete Greg LeMond con Miller con Sean Kelly, il ritardo di questo gruppetto 45 secondi. Cerca di fare l'elastico, cioè cerca di perdere un po' di terreno per poter scattare, ed ecco che scatta.
And once again, Fignon is off.
This is another attack. We're about a kilometer and a half from the finish. You can tell the power of Fignon. I think Fignon stays away like this to the finish. Condition, you've got the yellow jersey, you've just got as much confidence as it takes, and that's what really, made him win this stage, I think.
Well, there certainly appears to be no doubt about his abilities here, and this eventually becomes his fourth stage victory.
Yeah, this is Crans-Montana. The very final 400 meters was a very steep part, and he continued to take time out of Arroyo, who was behind him. I think he finished about 15 seconds behind. As you saw before, he was only about 5 seconds behind, but the superiority of Fignon's farm lets him dictate the race he wants to race.
Now, finishing this relatively short stage of 104 kilometers, you have to be thinking about what's coming up the following day at 320 kilometers, over 185 miles.
That was the longest stage of the Tour de France. It's following this race. It actually worked out to be about 340 kilometers because we had 20 kilometers neutralized, period. But mainly those flatter stages are usually, we weren't really worried too much about the severity of tomorrow. It was just everybody was kind of upset of the hours it took. That's what's most difficult about the Tour de France. A lot of other endurance sporting events, they have extreme distances, but you don't have the competitiveness as this. And it's very difficult for every day to race an individual race and race it like it was a one-day World Championships. This is my group that I was with We were about a minute behind Fignon. Right now I'm on Hinault's wheel. I knew that it was lost at that point to really move up to second place. Everybody was attacking our group at the last 200 or 300 meters. Hinault did most of the work up this climb, most of the pace setting.
So there was no gain for you at all here in your quest for second place?
No, it was too short of a stage for me. I needed a race that had 3 or 4 climbs. I was not really in top condition to race a race of that severity and that pace at a one-time effort.
Ecco Hinault con Gréset, con LeMond. Il ritardo è di oltre un minuto. Allora, Fignon